Good morning, it's Sam Matterface with Simon Jordan and Martin O'Neill. Should you boo one of your own? That's a question that's doing the rounds this morning after Raheem Sterling and his manager Mauricio Pochettino were booed by the Chelsea support during their 4-2 win over Leicester in the FA Cup a quarter-final at Stamford Bridge. This was the Chelsea fans on the moment that Mudryk was subbed and a chant towards Pochettino took place.
Mudryk is coming off and the Chelsea fans react with fury. Boos all around us. Chelsea fans stand up, arms outstretched, and I think they feel there's no way Mudryk should be coming off. That is a reaction that tells you a lot about the relationship at the moment between the Chelsea fans and their head coach.
Yeah, look, I can see what Pochettino's trying to do. He feels like by taking off Raheem Sterling, he's kind of killing him, but he's got to do what's right for Chelsea Football Club.
Chance of you don't know what you're doing from the Chelsea supporters after that substitution.
That was in the 78th minute live on talkSPORT yesterday. Martin, you were at the game and Simon said to you, how many fans was it? And you said, it was sizable, and it certainly sounded that way.
Yeah, I mean, Sterling, who I think is a very, very good player, he's just having a really tough time at the moment. He's missed a penalty. He's gone through in the second half, missed a really great chance. I mean, but it was his own pace that got him there in the first place. And then he takes this free kick. It looks as if Palmer might be taking the free kick, and then in steps Raheem and puts it in. But ideally, I think he put it out of the ground, perhaps, a free kick. Even so the crowd erupted at the time, and they were booing him during the course of the match. When it was come to make a substitution, then Mudryk comes off, and Sterling stays in the field. And of course, then they booing it even stronger again. So it's an interesting one, really, because as a manager myself, I think I heard somebody made the comment there, you do what's best for the team. Well, I'm hoping that Pochettino kept Raheem Sterling on because he thought it was going to be the best for the team. Not that, and I would, if I was going to make a substitution at that stage, I wouldn't really want to be pandering to the crowd. I really wouldn't be. I did early on in my career. I made a substitution way back in my Leicester City days when there was a lot of pressure on at the time, and I vowed I would never do it again. And hopefully, and there are many occasions when you feel as if, oh gosh almighty, that will placate the crowd in some aspect. But really, he made the substitution, Mudryk's come off, and then the crowd just absolutely went mad.
He did say afterwards, I'm not stupid. I know how to manage. You've got to trust me to do what I need to do. And ultimately, they were cruising at half-time 2-0 up. They had an XG of 4.4 at that time. But within minutes, they managed to have scored the most comical own goal you've ever seen. And the fans were singing, you don't know what you're doing. I thought a week was a long term in football. It seemed 15 minutes can be at Stamford Bridge. Why is it so helter-skelter, do you think, there?
Well, I don't know whether that's a microcosm of the booing is a microcosm of what is happening there. The crowd, I'm not so sure the crowd have ever really taken to Raheem Sterling. And I think that he's had a tough time. I personally speaking, I think he's an excellent player. Is he a better player than Mudryk? I think he's a better player than him. But the game had got to a stage where it's still very, very tight now, when perhaps it shouldn't be. They've missed a couple of chances. They should be in complete charge of the game.
They were really passive, didn't they?
We saw this with Chelsea in the extra time against Liverpool, where you felt as if almost that they were dropping back and maybe just waiting for penalties. No, that's an assumption I've made. That's not necessarily.
But it looked
true.
Like that, and it looked like it yesterday.
It looked like that yesterday as well too. And I think the crowd became just really angry about the situation. But again, if you are, as a coach, and I'll get back to the point, if you're going to have to make decisions every single time about what the crowd might want, you're not going to last anyway. So this is the whole point. Brian Clough, one of the great managers of all time, he used to keep players on the field. In those days when you only had one sub and the crowd were chanting, generally it was for me to be taken off, but he would keep players on the field because he was not going to pander to the crowd.
With your knowledge of the owners, what do you think the assessment will be of 2 trips to Wembley and a top half finish? Is that satisfactory for them?
I think it's moving in the right direction now. Whether Chelsea are a significant work in process and not particularly a great side. I mean, if they win the 2 games in hand, they're going to go 7th in the league. They're going to have gone to potentially 2 cup finals. Now, of course, if you go to 2 cup finals, you win neither of them. There's still just 2 cup finals you were present in rather than winning anything.
But if they were to win one, they'd be in the Europa League group stage.
Therein answers the question of what the potential opportunity for Chelsea is. As bad as they've been at times this season and as inconsistent and as strange on the eye, and both in the decisions that they've made with certain players. I mean, Raheem Sterling, for me, is one of those players that's been built up, as we so often do in this country, to levels that he's never been at, and then judged by those levels. He's a decent player. He's a good player. He doesn't play for Man City for X amount of years without being a good player.
He did that himself, scoring 31 goals in one season for Manchester City, scoring the goals that propelled England in the European Championship.
And that's fine, but that doesn't make him a world-class player. I mean, he scored 91 goals in 225 games in Premier League games for Manchester City. So that means he must have gone bugger all for the rest of the time if he scored 31 in one season. The point is that the Chelsea fans, for whatever reason, and I don't think it's constructive, I don't think it's productive. I think Martin's probably right. The manager's got to make the decisions that he thinks are the right ones to make. And if he believes that keeping Raheem Sterling on the pitch, I mean, this wasn't so long ago that Madrid couldn't trap a bag of cement. I mean, this player's gone from one status to another just because the fans have got something in their mind.
He's been playing well.
Recently, but it's only in recent times. He's not been a world beater since he walked through the door.
No,
I mean, people have been questioning him.
But he scored a terrific goal against
here?
Newcastle on Monday night, and he played well in the game yesterday.
And fantastic. But the manager's made a decision, and then the decision has resulted in an outcome that Chelsea have won the FA Cup quarter-final, and they're in the semi-finals of the FA Cup now. I don't understand. Chelsea fans have sat here 2 years ago pleading for their football club to be saved because they were going to be ultimately shut down. That doesn't mean they should be eternally grateful. But Pochettino is a decent manager. Do I think he'll win the league for Chelsea? No, I don't. Do I think he'll get them into the top 4 in short order? Yes. And do I think that he could win an FA Cup? Possibly. But if the Chelsea fans have made their mind up, I don't understand what they've made their mind up on.
That's a question for you. If they've made their mind up, if they already feel like they've lost any sort of small feeling games, isn't it? That they had for him. Is there still a chance for him to rectify that situation? Or, as an owner, do you start thinking to yourself, this is never going to work out?
Win games. It's only never going to work out if the manager doesn't win games. If he wins games, then there'll be dissenting voices. And, of course, if he loses games...
You think they'll turn around? Even if they've lost respect for him, even if they've not had him because he's got a Tottenham history and things haven't gone well in the opening stages of his career, he can turn it around if he starts winning. You think that's still possible?
Well, that's the ultimate equaliser, isn't it? I don't wish to be and never would inhabit the mind of a Chelsea supporter. And so to understand why they might have some disdain towards Pochettino, I think some of the interviews that he's done after the games have been laissez-faire. I don't think there's been enough energy in some of the pushbacks that he's had. I think he was quite happy to be told that his team were a bunch of bottle jobs by Gary Neville and seemed to think that he had more to do with saying he had respect for Gary rather than being very robust about his opinion.
I think he's just trying to take the temperature down, isn't he? He's just trying to
play everyone. I agree with Simon on that point. I disagree with Simon in terms of Sterling's. I think Sterling's been a brilliant player, a really brilliant player, and he's a dangerous player. He's got no confidence at this minute, and your confidence is very, very low when the crowd are booing and wanting you off the field. That's a very, very difficult situation. It's one that you have to try and pull back. And perhaps maybe there might be a stage where, that Xhaka at Arsenal had the crowd baying for his blood, and then suddenly, maybe not suddenly, but it certainly changed again. That can happen. It can actually happen, and you can become a hero again. He's a really good player. Where I agree with Simon is that Pochettino, he said before the League Cup final, this won't change. Even if he wins the League Cup final, this wouldn't change the opinion of what the Chelsea crowd have of him, whatever that opinion happened to have been before. And I totally disagree with that. If you win a competition, it gives you a bit of power, it gives you some sort of leverage to go on and push on, and you can at least show the owners that I've won a competition. We're on our way. We're starting off. We're really starting to go with it.
It's important.
The other part was, that's exactly right. You shouldn't be worrying about what somebody said about being a bottle job. It's as if Gary Neville's comments should be changing the world. At the end of the day, forget about it.
But they should be corrected. It's also important to listen to what people said. I didn't say that Raheem Sterling wasn't a good player. I think he's a very good player. What my criticism of is this idea that you build players up to a world-class status and then you start to judge them by it. Marcus Rashford suffers from that because people then have an expectation which is unrealistic. Raheem Sterling is a good player, no doubt about it. You don't get to play for Liverpool, you don't get to play for Man City, and you don't get to go to Chelsea if you're not a good player. The difference is between the characterisation of he's not a world-class player. If he was a world-class player, then his statistics would be different.
No one's calling him a world-class player. Chelsea fans don't want to. They're not saying he's a world-class player. They're saying that his performances haven't been up to scratch.
Sterling has been repeatedly being told over the years and repeatedly characterised in that respect. And I think it's a terrible trait It's, you know, people do well for one particular season and all of them automatically are a world-class player, and then they have to suffer that legacy of being judged by that standard. But Raheem Sterling has got to take ownership. He's a big boy. He's got plenty to say for himself at times. He's plenty of character about him. If you've got a difficult period, then the best players find their way through it. And 12 goals in 53 games for Chelsea isn't particularly impressive, is it?
No. Booing, should you ever do it to one of your own? This is from Des, who's in Romford. It's disgusting. I've been going to Stamford Bridge for 50 years, he says. I've seen a lot of rubbish football in that time. Not once have I booed. Too many Johnny-come-lately glory hunters. We'd be better off without them. I'm happy to give Poch the time. A joke yesterday that Mudryk was cheered on yesterday, and yet a few weeks ago fans were slagging him off. Shameful, says Des. 03717223344. You can text us as well, 81089. You know, go back sort of 40 years ago, 1987, 88, which was the year that Chelsea got relegated from a playoff involving Middlesbrough. Things have been different at Stamford Bridge, and they are in a rebuilding process at this moment in time. But have fans run out of patience already? 03717223344. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. Lots coming up still on the programme today, including topsy-turvy Tottenham, beaten by Fulham this weekend.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.